अस्सलाम वालेकुम सर।
वालेकुम सलाम खले। खलील, एक चीज पूछना था। तो रिगार्डिंग दोज एमबीए स्टूडेंट्स के ईमेल एड्रेसेस।
हाँ, वो कल कल मॉर्निंग में फर्स्ट आवर में कर दूंगा सर। वो थोड़ा घर पे वालदा की
जी
भी
अच्छा।
की तबीयत
जी
थोड़ा
अच्छा। जी जी।
तो हमारे मिसेस भी गए हुए, थोड़ा उनका
अच्छा,
भी 7
ये
मंथ चल।
रिकॉर्ड हो रहा है शायद, तो लेट्स लेट्स डिस्कस
नहीं होगा
पर्सनल
सर।
मैटर्स ऑन द
जी सर।
फोन।
जी
जी
सर।
अच्छा। जी। सो बिकॉज लाइव स्ट्रीमिंग इज गोइंग ऑन, सो दे शुड।
होल्ड पे है सर लाइव स्ट्रीमिंग।
अच्छा,
जी।
because it says live on custom live streaming, so that's why I'm saying maybe.
नो नो सर।
Okay.
अभी के लिए मैं लाइव स्ट्रीमिंग स्टार्ट करके पॉज कर दे रहा हूँ सर। जैसा सेशन स्टार्ट होता अपना, जब पूरा डिस्कशन खत्म होने के बाद में उसको स्टार्ट करता हूँ, प्ले करता हूँ।
जी अच्छा, because it says recording is paused. Yeah, so that's good. Okay, ठीक है. So inshallah, we'll catch up with you on सब खैरियत से है, सब क्या
जी
है.
जी। इंशाल्लाह मैं कल मॉर्निंग फर्स्ट आवर में कर दूंगा सर वो।
जी अच्छा, चल ठीक है. Owais is going to join soon. We should put a reminder in the. I will put a reminder on the group. Sure. Okay.
Assalamu alaikum everyone.
Walaikum
वालेकुम
assalam.
अस्सलाम।
Hello, assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Walaikum salam. We'll have to wait maybe another 5 minutes just so that more
I
can
think that
join.
makes sense. We could wait
Yeah.
for a few minutes and then get started.
Yeah. So, Safdar, how are you doing?
Sir, I was not doing quite well in the last week. I was having some fever, prolonged fever for like 1 week. So I was good. How are you, sir?
How are you now? ठीक है?
Good. Yes, sir. Alhamdulillah. How are you, sir?
I'm fine. So, was it COVID or was it ordinary viral fever?
No, sir. It was a normal viral fever, and also due to taking a tireless journey, I was I went to travel to my hometown, so that
अच्छा,
tired me a lot of the season there.
अच्छा. So we'll wait another couple of minutes, and उसके बाद में let's start, right? Saudar?
Yes, sir.
So who's going to be introducing the speaker today? Arib was supposed to be doing it, right? Or somebody else is doing it.
Sir,
Who's doing it?
Arif has, appointed Rajat in his place because he
Okay.
is also not very good.
Okay. Okay. So our exams, etc., over in Jamia, things are going fine.
Yes, sir. The exams were over last week, and now the notice will come out if this session will be going on offline or not. I mean, for the other universities, state universities, it is going to be offline from mid of September, but not for the central universities. Notice hasn't came yet.
Acha. Okay, yeah. So let's see how things, turn out. It's a challenging year for everybody. So, Rajat, are you from Jamia or from AMU?
Sir, AMU.
From AMU.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and how is your semester going? Like, where are you in the semester?
So we are in mid of semester, second semester right now.
Okay, very good. So we are, I think, at around 25 participants now, including, I think, the speaker and me. So let's wait one more minute and then we will start. Do you have any idea about when placements are going to be starting in Jamia, Safdar?
Sir, in Jamia, we have started one or two companies. We have started just after our exams. So we are in contact with some of the companies who will be arriving by the end of this September. And yeah, the session is on now, so it will take like 3-4 months to wrap up.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And what about AMU, Rajat? Any idea?
Sir, we right now, like a week before, we made a committee of TPU, and they are working on it, like, because we are in mid of the second semester, and at the end of second semester they will start their work.
Okay.
They started their work.
Okay, wonderful. So I think let's start because there's no point in waiting more, and let's see and hope that more will show up. So Rajat, I think it's Safdar and Rajat, whoever wants to start can start the session. Khalil, can you just start the recording, please? Yeah. Yes, go ahead, guys.
Rajat?
Hello, hello everyone. My name is Rajat Vashne. I am pursuing Master in Business Administration from Aligarh Muslim University. Today I am here to introduce mentor of today's workshop conducted by City Foundation. It is my honor to introduce Mr. Owais Siddiqui. Owais is a senior data scientist at Amazon with experience in machine learning, big data analytics, data engineering, and management. He is currently based on Amazon's New York office, but has worked on various projects at their Seattle and Luxembourg office in the past. Owais has developed pricing and product recommendation system for Amazon B2B marketplace that have been deployed globally across 8 countries and 3 continents. Prior to Amazon, he worked as a data engineer at Deloitte and received the outstanding award, that is highest employee recognition, for his contribution to various consulting and internal analytics projects. Owais has completed his master's in Computer Science from the University of California, San Diego, focusing on artificial intelligence and database that was fully funded by scholarship. Before that, he obtained a BE in Computer Science at Osmania University. Great to have you, sir.
Thank you so much, Rajat, for that kind introduction. And let me just go ahead and share my screen and start the presentation. First thing, is my voice clearly audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So, like Rajat mentioned, I've been working at Amazon for the last 5 years. During the course of those 5 years, I've had an opportunity to work with a lot of incoming MBA students, as well as MBA product managers. And based on my interactions with them and the projects that I've worked on with them, what I have put together here is basically some information that might be useful for you to start thinking about data science and machine learning, and preparing yourselves to be able to work with data scientists or technical teams once you join the industry across the board. So with that, let's start with this slide. I'll give you a few seconds for you guys to read through this. And so one of the things that we as data scientists sort of face when we are in meetings with product managers is that with these big terms such as big data, machine learning, data science, a lot of people think that they can solve all the problems you have. Any problem within the company, let's find a machine learning or an artificial intelligence solution for it and build it out, and the problem is solved. And that sort of thinking is not useful, because there are projects which can be built using different mechanisms, and you have to think about whether or not using machine learning or data science is effective. And as we go through the presentation, you guys will get a sense of exactly what that criteria is and how you should be thinking about projects when it comes to data science. So with that, what actually is data science? And like it's mentioned, it's basically using data to solve real world problems. And machine learning in particular is being able to have a computer understand specific problems and how to solve them without being programmed to do it. So it's learning from whatever data that you're providing and is able to build a solution around it. And what is basically the reason why these sort of fields are growing quite a bit is because as time passes, the data that we're working with is fairly large. If you think about all the social media websites, e-commerce websites, they're collecting tons and tons of data on their customers based on their interactions with those websites, and they're using that to refine their experiences and with the advances in computing. But along with this, a better way to sort of explain this, which I've used in the past, is using an example. And let me sort of get started with that. And before I get into this, one thing that I'd like to let you guys know is that I'd like to have this session as interactive as possible. If you guys have any questions, feel free to add them in chat. We will have breaks in between the presentation as well, where I'll pause and take any questions that you have. Feel free to let me know. I'd be happy to answer. So with that being said, let me try to explain data science with these sort of sets of pictures. Now, let's assume that all of you had a set of 50 pictures, which contained pictures of cats as well as pictures of dogs. And the task that you have is to be able to figure out which ones are cats and which ones are dogs. So human nature would be to first look at those pictures and determine if this is a cat, you put them in one bucket. If this is a dog, you put them in another bucket. So like I said, you have about 50 pictures. So it would probably take you maybe 5 to 10 minutes to complete that task. And at the end, you have a manually sorted sort of set of pictures. Now let's assume that the task is now expanded to 1 million pictures, 1 million pictures of all sorts of cats and dogs. And now, if you think about doing this manually, it's probably going to take you maybe quite a bit of time and quite a bit of resources as well. So how do you go about doing that? One way to do that would be able to write a program that defines the characteristics of a cat and dog, like some sort of rules. And this approach is called basically heuristic model, where cats have whiskers, for example, and dogs have flappy ears. So you could define these characteristics by yourself and then write a program that looks at that image and is able to sort them into 2 buckets. Now, the next step is basically machine learning, where what you do is you're giving these pictures to an algorithm, and the algorithm itself is learning from those pictures what represents cats and dogs based on a small sample that you've recognized, and then is able to use that information to predict for the rest of the pictures. So repeating these 3 steps, the first one is manual sorting. You have 50 pictures, you are able to sort of sort them by yourself. The next one is a heuristic model where you've defined a set of rules. The third one is a machine learning or a data science model where the algorithm is itself defining those rules and is able to do it in a way that you could measure how accurate it is. So with that, in the past, you might have heard about statistics, and these days, as we all are hearing about data science and machine learning, what's the reason why this transition from sort of statistics to data science has happened? It's because of these 4 V's, which is the volume of the data that we're working with. As you know, Facebook, Twitter, and Netflix have hundreds of millions of subscribers and users. You've got a variety of data that we're working with, which include text, audio, images, and even the velocity as well. Like if you think about Facebook and Twitter or any other e-commerce website, transactions are happening every second and data is being added every day. So you have to be able to make decisions within that day. And that's where having these data science and machine learning problems are useful. And then finally, how accurate and applicable the data is. So before we get into the rest of the presentation as well, I put this slide here just for you guys to get a sense of the terminology and how it's simply sort of explained. If you guys have some sort of statistics background, and if you've heard of some of these terms like dependent or response variable, in machine learning, that's basically the target. And the definition for that is basically what you're trying to predict. In statistics, the independent or explanatory variables are features in machine learning. And this is basically the data that you're using to make predictions. The next one is transformation in statistics, which is feature engineering. This is basically reshaping the data so that you could extract more value out of it. And the final one is subset selection or variable selection, which is called feature selection in machine learning, which is using the most sort of valuable data that you have that's available for you to start making your predictions. And here are some sort of just interesting facts that I've listed down for data science and that you guys can read. Before we, I think, head into the first sort of question answer session, and I'll, after that, get into some applications of data science with specific examples. So I'll let you guys read this for maybe 10 seconds and then we proceed. So like you can see here, a lot of the data that we have has been produced very recently, and what's the impact of of using that data, like a 10% increase generates quite a bit of additional income for regular like Fortune 1000 company, and that within the context of India, data science and analytics sector is growing quite a bit. So with that, let's move into the first question answer session, and then after that, I'll start getting into some applications. So generally regarding data science as well as what we've discussed up to now, if you have anything to ask, feel free to just type it down or unmute yourself, and I'd be happy to respond.
Yeah, so I think this is an opportunity for you guys to sort of, ask your questions, unmute yourselves and just ask it, whatever the question may be, should be fine. So
I want to ask that where to learn from this data science. Is there any course online available, or where to learn from?
So incidentally, at the end of the session, I have resources listed and specific courses listed as well. From the business perspective and product management perspective, I'll be sharing that information as well. I'll share this presentation too. You would have access to look at it and do those courses later on as well.
Hi, Owais. This side Mohsin. I want to know what is the difference between business analyst and data scientist?
Great question. Incidentally, we have a slide for that.
I'm figuring out my way to become a business analyst. So I want to know more about that. How can I learn that?
Sure. That's a great question, Mohsin. Incidentally, I have a slide where I'm talking about roles associated with data science teams, which comes a little further ahead. And I plan on sharing that as well to the team. So I'll discuss more about that, and we could pick up that question then and answer anything that you have you need clarity on. Does that make sense?
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Great. I'll take maybe one or two more questions.
Sir, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Sir, as the volume of data is increasing in the e-commerce sector and also in the social media sector, so the amount of data which companies are collecting is not very much of use for that very company. So so are they also selling out the data after traversing it in some productive information to some of the firms, or they are using it for their own?
I would say most companies have their policy associated with data listed on their websites, and would be dependent on, like if you're thinking about e-commerce websites in particular, for Amazon, that data, from my understanding and like experience, is not sold externally, but is used internally to gain insight. And with the amount of data that's being collected and used in these sort of machine learning and AI problem spaces, I would highly recommend that you guys keep an eye on what data that you're sharing and how much you feel you're comfortable with. And if you aren't comfortable with, there are mechanisms to sort of prevent your data being used. Companies like Google, Facebook, and for advertising purposes, there are a lot of information that is collected from users, and there are alternates that are available for you to sort of prevent that being used. So this is something that I would recommend that you explore. Next question.
Yeah, so just to, just 1 second, sorry, just to take that a bit further. Safdar, why did you ask the question? In the sense, what was it that you were, are you worried about privacy concerns, or are you looking?
I had an additional question regarding this as well. So my additional question was, as we are into an AI environment now, the technology is into more of the AI. So the data collected by these firms are traversed automatically, or they are, still relied on the engineers who worked on these data and, bifurcate what is necessary and what's not. So, whole data is being traversed by AI, or there are still people working upon it?
So the way that it works internally within these companies is that a lot of the data is collected based on need. Like if a customer is sort of looking at a product, how many customers are looking at it, and then whether it's sort of converting to sale. So just to get a sense of it. And if, for example, there are a lot of people that are looking at a product and not purchasing it, that's an indication that maybe that price point of that product, or there's something associated with that product that's bringing people to that page, but it's not converting to sale. So that sort of information would be used by the internal selection or pricing teams, and they'd make changes or drive improvements to it. Now, in terms of whether all of it is being processed by AI or there are like individual engineering teams that are programming through this, this is also varied. The data is available. There are some teams that use it for artificial intelligence, some teams that use it for sort of heuristic models.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great. So with that, let's proceed to the next set of slides. And if you guys have any questions, we'll pick it up after that. So moving on to some applications of data science. And what I've done is I've provided some examples across industries and then some specific examples pertaining to business. So just to get a sense of where data science and machine learning is being used. So one example, which is fairly relevant for our day and age, which is in the healthcare sector or if across public health organizations and governments, there are predictions that are being made on COVID-19 deaths or cases in order to take precautionary measures or get a sense of when to implement any lockdown measures. And for that, data science is being used, where this is sort of a forecasting problem, where they use past data to predict future data. And here you could either do something called a time series model or a regression problem, where you're predicting a numerical outcome. So this is the first example. The next one, which if folks here are into sports, they might have seen, which is in cricket, the ball tracking system, where if the ball impacts specific parts of the cricketer, and then they're projecting it to determine whether or not it hits the wickets. And this is also using image processing and deep learning. The next one is transportation, which is these days you've got companies like Uber, Ola, or e-commerce companies which are delivering packages. And a lot of these want to make sure that they're using the most optimal path, saving fuel, and if they're delivering packages, saving time as well. So here as well, machine learning models are used in order to determine the most optimal path, and then that's provided to these delivery drivers to determine and proceed with. The next one is government and politics, or just even companies getting a sense of customer sentiment, where social media is sort of used, data is used, or text data is used in order to determine the sentiment of how people are perceiving. In this case, the government. If you see those three specific texts, it shows one that is positive, the other one that's neutral, and the third one where there's a negative sentiment. And this area also, if you think about it, every day there are 1 million tweets that are generated. You can't have individual humans going through that to determine whether or not it's positive or negative. There are machine learning models that go through that text and extract meaning out of it and say that this is a positive.
Owais bhai, you have to unmute yourself by mistake.
Okay. Am I audible now?
Yes.
Great. So like I was saying, basically, text analysis and natural language processing is being used in order to derive sentiment of the various tweets that are posted online. The next one, in sort of entertainment, like if you think about YouTube or Netflix, where you have on the right-hand side recommendations based on sort of your viewing history. And what it does is it tries to understand what sort of videos that you're most likely to click and still remain on the website so that they can continue to um, uh, have you either look at advertisements so that you can continue to generate revenue for them. So they're trying to make sure that you're still on the website. And for that to happen, they need to get to you the most relevant content. And that's why these recommendation systems exist, where based on your viewing history and similar customers, machine learning models predict and recommend. So with that, then in terms of e-commerce, for example, like new product classification, where if you have tons and tons of products that are being uploaded online every day, you need descriptions and information associated with them if it's accurate or not. You have machine learning models that could do image processing to understand whether or not the product is accurately described or accurately classified in the right grouping, clothing, or otherwise. And this is a classification problem in machine learning. So here, this is sort of a simple interactive exercise where what on the left hand you see is a box, a matrix that shows customers 1 to 10, and then you've got 8 items, 1 to 8, and customers have basically provided their rating for each of these items. And where there is no rating available, that is a product that the customer hasn't used. So what this means is user 1 used item 1 and they've rated it 5 stars. They haven't used item 2 and therefore there is no rating. So what I'd like you to do is just look at these list of users and try to find 2 users who are very similar based on their rating patterns. And let's see if we can recommend a product to them. So just go through this sheet of ratings, and if you could find 2 users who are very similar in nature, just let me know. Great. So it looks like Safdar has a response for that. It is indeed 1 and 7. So what you see here is you've got user 1 who and 7 who've got very similar ratings. And one thing you'll notice is that for user 1, item 3, they've rated it very high, 5 out of 5. Therefore, this might be a useful product to recommend to user 7. So the next recommendation that they're going to see is probably item 3. So this is kind of how it functions on a very simple level, but machine learning models are able to scale this to millions and millions of products and millions of users. So here is a fairly interesting slide, which just talks about the implications of machine learning across various industries, which include, if you've not seen it yet, but there's a store called Amazon Go where there's no checkout lines. If you just go inside, you pick up a product and you leave. That's sort of changing how shopping is happening. A lot of these examples you might have seen for Airbnb for their recommendations, including stuff like Disney's Magic Band, which is basically a band that they give to the customer when they enter any of these Disney parks so that they can get a sense of where they're visiting and who they're sort of interacting with to provide future recommendations. And the rest of the examples are similar in nature, where companies have started using data science and machine learning in order to improve their products and services. The next one is AI applications for business, where you've got stuff like understanding customers, where companies are doing sentiment analysis and natural language processing, fostering innovation, where they're extracting ideas out of text. You've got visual design of products. You've got targeting and personalization, where product recommendations sort of feature, and automatic content creation, which is also happening via data science and machine learning these days. Like the sentiment analysis example, here's an interesting image which shows sentiment analysis of basically Reddit comments during an Apple event in 2018, which is showing at specific points in time how customers are sort of the number of comment counts that exist, as well as what people are sort of thinking about those comments, about those products via comments. So companies are able to do this in real time to get a sense of how people are perceiving their product. And the next one is, like I mentioned in the past, companies like Amazon without having to manually sort products based on how these products look like, they're able to parse these images through machine learning models and sort them into various groups. And then the final one, which is targeting and personalization. From the business front, we looked at an example on YouTube, but this is an example on e-commerce where products are recommended to you based on your purchase history and similar customers. So with these examples, let's take another pause and then get into any questions that you guys have. And the next one is I'll be talking about basically what are the roles and requirements that you have to think about before starting any data science projects.
Hi, Owais. I want to ask that regarding product placement and targeting method used in Google, that when we think subconsciously and we talk to somebody about certain product, when we open our phone, it just shows up on our screen. So are they listening us, or is deep learning is so much correct that it just shows us at that very moment of time?
Incidentally, that does happen with me as well. Like I've noticed as well, I'm having a conversation about something and the next thing is I'm seeing an advertising regarding that. Ideally, from what I understand, shouldn't be happening, because you need to give your permissions to your microphones to specific apps. One thing that you should be careful of is a lot of these phones, if you think about the permission settings, they have access to various things across the board. So I would recommend maybe each and every one of you just go through that and get a sense of what you've given permission to and what not. And if it doesn't make sense for something to have a specific permission, just revoke it. Ideally, that could help, but ideally shouldn't be actually happening without you giving explicit permission. From what I've read online, like products like Google Home as well as Amazon Alexa shouldn't be recording you without you explicitly calling them to for a specific service. But yeah.
And regarding Google Ads, I was studying Google Ads, and there is a session where we have to watch Google YouTube ads deliberately to study them. So Google is pretty smart that it won't show up when we actually want to see that ad. So what is that?
Sorry, I didn't get that part. If you don't mind explaining it.
I was studying about Google Ads, and
I guess what we could do is maybe for this specific set of questions, you could take it offline and we could have a discussion around that. Let's try to keep the questions focused on maybe data science and machine learning. But yeah, that would be my advice. With that, does that make sense?
Okay.
I want to ask that, Owais, that what is the future of jobs related to data science in India in upcoming 5 years?
So like I discussed in the previous set of slides, one of the things that like we've noticed for data science and machine learning is that the industry is growing quite a bit. And in terms of for specific roles, such as data scientist and research scientist, which are technical in nature, there is quite a lot of growth. But along with that, every company and industry is using this, like I've shown during the first set of slides. So there is a need for people to be managing these projects that are data science oriented, wherein a lot of product managers fit in, who are working on various data science projects. Like most, in Amazon in particular, most of the product managers that are hired at some point of time are managing some sort of data science project. So there is quite a bit of potential as the industry grows. I do not have specific numbers per se, but I would recommend that if you are thinking of any of these roles, which are product manager, program manager, or consultant as well, across the industry, post your MBA, you will almost always have an interaction with some sort of machine learning model or data science project, and it'd be useful to have these skills. Does that answer your question?
Yes, but we are not getting taught data science in our course in MBA. So that's a problem for us.
Makes sense. So I'll share a set of resources at the end of the slide, and we can you could definitely pick that up. I can share some courses that are technical in nature as well, and you could proceed with that. And like for the previous question, Mohsin, if you could just type it down in the chat, maybe it'll be easier to sort of figure out, and we can pick it up in later question answer sessions.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, always. So the resources that you are providing, after learning from those resources, can we apply for internships? Like those resources are enough for applying for internships in this field?
I would say it depends on what sort of internships you're looking for. Are you thinking of like internships that are technical in nature, like data
Yeah,
analyst,
like
data engineer?
internship in data analyst roles.
I would say for that, yeah, go ahead.
Rehan, just to ask a question, what is your background? Like, what did you do for undergraduate?
Commerce, bachelor's in commerce.
Okay, and did you have any training in statistics or business analytics or anything like that?
No, I'm just a fresher in this field.
Okay. Yeah, no, so the question is, there are maybe two types of roles. One is kind of like a data scientist as such, and then there are other roles which may involve data. So I just wanted to get an idea about your background, and also, I'm sure there are many other people with similar background here. So Owais can take that into account in trying to answer your question. There is also, I think, a similar question in chat, which you may want to look at, Owais, and then
Sure.
Figure out.
I think for this, what I could do is in the next few slides, incidentally, one of the things that I'm talking about is all of these roles, which include data analyst and what sort of knowledge do they need. I can talk about this in particular on this slide. I think that's definitely a possibility. But yeah, just to answer it fairly simply, if you are thinking of a role like a data analyst or a data scientist, there are varying degrees of technical skill sets that you'd have to gain and courses that you'd have to do. We could definitely share you for data analyst or data scientist what you might need and what you'd have to do. You would have to think of it beyond the product management perspective and do some hands-on technical work as well to be able to get into these fields as interns or full-time roles. Make sense? We can cover this in the upcoming few slides as well. Great. Do we have any other questions?
Yeah,
go ahead.
I have a question. I'm just curious. I have a question. Like there are companies in India which are working in the area of finance, like Creed. Their business model is particularly based on collecting data and using it to generate insights. So, what do you think that what kind of insight these companies are going to generate, and what kind of impact they are going to have in a financial world?
Do you have an example of any such company and what sort of data that they're collecting?
Yeah. Creed. Have you heard of? There is a startup, Creed, in India.
It's Cred.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
And I haven't heard of it.
So the business model of Cred totally caters the people, the top 5% of the people who actually uses credit cards. and they have an insight of how those people have this shopping patterns, and also the payment of the bills, how they do it with the use of credit card. So this is what is the business model of credit. Now over to your question, Sakib.
Yeah, this is what I was trying to ask. So, like I was trying to get some clarification. Like, what do you think that when they are, targeting very specific percentage of people, and what kind of data would they generate, and how would they use it for what?
So in this case, if they are collecting sort of credit card data to get a sense of how people are making their transactions and paying their bills, there is a possibility that this data will help financial services companies determine how to issue credit cards, or what sort of um, limits to set or not. So what happens is, for every problem that any sort of industry faces, the first thing that will happen is there data available? Is there a possibility to collect data in some sort of ethical manner? And if that data is available, can it be used to process and generate some sort of insight that can drive improvements to whatever processes exist? So that's kind of the sequence. With any example of any company, that's usually how it goes. But yeah, one thing we as consumers, we've got to be careful of is making sure that we protect our data in a way that we aren't sharing it to companies beyond what we are comfortable with, or if not, not sharing it at all, and then controlling what sort of data that you provide to enhance whatever experiences that you're working with. So that's one thing that I would keep in mind.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. Next question. Or should we proceed with the rest of the slides?
Yeah, I think you should proceed now and then take questions later, because I'm sure many of the questions will be answered as you move ahead.
Sure. So moving on to sort of data science ideation, I'd say that like the first thing that you guys should think about whenever you're building any sort of product or working on any of these data science projects is, what is the customer need? Like, who is your customer? What's the problem and opportunity that you're trying to solve? And what's the most important benefit that this project would bring about? And like, are you accurately understanding what the customer need is? And finally, what the customer experience is going to look like for whatever solution that is being built. And in terms of a checklist for you to understand whether or not you need to use machine learning is, what does this sort of problem require complex logic? If yes, then you could use it. The second one is scalability, whether it's a challenge. Like we looked at the example in the past of picture sorting. If you had just 50 pictures, it's easy for you to do. But if it turns out to be a million pictures or 10 million pictures, scaling a manual sorting process is difficult. That's where you probably need machine learning. Where there's a need for certain sort of personalization, where personalized recommendations, etc. And then the final one is adoption. Whatever solution you built, there is a possibility of it being adopted in a timely fashion, along with making sure that you have data that's available for you to be able to build these sort of machine learning projects. Now, coming to sort of data requirements, I'd say that you have to keep in mind that the data should be sort of readily available and easily accessible. You don't want to be in a situation where you're building this project, but you don't have any data available, because whatever you build, it's going to be dependent on how good your data is. It should also respect privacy and be secure, like we've talked a bit about during this presentation, making sure that you are not using personally identifiable information. So for any data that's being processed, it's being processed at some sort of aggregated level, where maybe 100 million customers' data is being aggregated and then insight is being generated, rather than looking at individual customer data. And then the final one, it has to be of good quality, which is relevant, fresh, representative, and unbiased. One example that I'll give you is, incidentally, I think this was 3 or 4 years ago, Amazon had this machine learning model that would sort resumes when they were applied. And later on, they found that it had a gender bias associated with it. It was selecting more men versus female. And they found out that it was due to what data was provided to the machine learning model. So they worked on sort of reworking that and making sure that the model was unbiased in nature, or choosing a more unbiased approach for this. So that's how ML models could affect decision making as well. The next one, which I think a lot of folks have talked about, and I'll keep this slide on for a bit, which is on roles. Now, the left side has roles. On the top, let me define what each of these are. Subject matter expert is basically somebody who's an expert in that industry. If it's e-commerce, retail, if it's, what do you say, healthcare, or financial sector, etc. So this is somebody who needs to know the subject matter expert of that to be able to function okay. The next one is data processing or engineering. This is basically being able to work with large amounts of data. The next one is data science, which is being able to extract insight out of this data. And the final one is programming, coding, and ST skills. So whether or not you're able to code or program well, which is the technical work in nature. So now coming to these specific roles, if you're a product owner or a product manager, what you need to be good at is the subject matter. You need to be have significant expertise in that area, even if you do not have a lot of understanding of the other areas. The next one, which is data analyst or business analyst, which is some folks have mentioned, they need to have a basic understanding of the subject matter, but along with that, they need to have somewhat data engineering ability. So being able to write SQL queries, which is a database programming language. So I can share some information around that as well if you haven't heard about it. But data engineering, to put simply, is being able to process that data. And you should have some sort of intermediate expertise to be able to run, maybe even put it in Excel and manipulate it to get or build pivot charts, etc. The next one is data engineer, who's somebody who's focused on the data in particular and should have some basic and intermediate understanding of other things. A data scientist is somebody who sort of works at breadth. They need to know things across the board because they have to work cross-functionally. Somebody who has some understanding of the subject matter expert is able to sort of process that data, is able to build that machine learning model using coding and data science techniques. The next set of ones are ML engineer. This person doesn't need to know any of the subject matter expertise. They work with a data scientist to finalize that project. Basically, they need to have the data science knowledge and very strong coding and programming skills. And the final one is an ST who works just on coding, building some sort of front end and UI of that product, and doesn't need any other knowledge. So I'll try to pause here. And if you guys have any questions, just ask me before we proceed, or any clarifications that you need, because I think this is an area that a lot of people have asked.
Sir, what does mean in subject matter expert? Like,
so for example, in like let's consider Amazon, for example. Here, there are various problems that we are solving. One is like pricing, which is how to set the price of a product. Okay. You've got selection, which is what sort of products do we have on Amazon? So a product owner or a product manager, what they need to know is what are these pricing strategies that are available? Like what sort of things that we could explore. Along with that, they need to know what the customer need is, as well as how customers sort of think about pricing. They need to have the expertise in that specific area in order to be able to build solutions around that. If so that's where they bring in that knowledge, and then they translate that to a data scientist or other sort of data engineers to be able to build that solution for them. or the problem that they're facing. Does that answer your question, or should we discuss a few more examples?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And like decision making ability.
Yes, in that specific area as well.
Sir, does data marketing specialist comes under this subject matter expert role?
Uh, Data marketing specialist, and I presume, like, if to define this role would be somebody who is using data to do marketing. Is that the case?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So that's also an interesting role, and we have people in Amazon who do marketing and are working with data. And a lot of the times, the two areas that they're good at is the subject matter expertise as well as data processing and engineering. So something like a data analyst, but beyond, they have a strong subject matter expertise. So what they do is they look for opportunities to set out these marketing campaigns, and they're able to collect the data to determine who to send out to and what to send exactly. Does that
So
make
we
sense?
can change. Yes. So we can change for data science role in if we want to.
Like usually if you have sort of data engineering sort expertise, and if you're gaining data science knowledge, there is a possibility for you to transition to data scientists. However, one thing to understand is that data scientist is a fairly technical area, and there will be a coding bar and data science test as well. It's not something you can't do, but you should have to spend the time and work hard to gain that technical foundation along with your subject matter expertise and data engineering in order to transition to becoming a data scientist. It is possible, but it's a challenging sort of process for you, for folks. So that's something that I would keep in mind.
Okay.
Somebody else was asking a question.
So one question regarding machine learning.
Yeah.
So when we talk about machine learning, more often we heard about things like languages, Python, Java, R, and sorts of these things. So
Yes.
are there more to it, or is just limited to languages only in machine learning or artificial intelligence or things of this sort?
I would say in terms of programming, would be ideal to choose one of those. For example, you could choose Python or R. You probably don't need to do Java, as most of the libraries in Python and R should be sufficient. But beyond that, you need to know data science techniques as well, like regression, classification. And there are courses available on that as well. Like you need to know that side of things. What sort of algorithm to apply in this case? If I'm trying to process technical data, text data, how do I process that? What sort of algorithm do I use? Like for sentiment analysis, there's a naive Bayes algorithm that is used in order to process it. You need to gain an understanding of that. So one side would be being able to write programs in Python or R, and the other side is having an understanding of data science techniques and algorithms.
Okay, so tools and techniques, courses, and statistics, basically.
Yes. So let's go look at a few questions on chat and then come back to the questions that the folks have on call. So I said one question by Sayyid Adnan Amir is whether you need an engineering degree and if it's mandatory. I would say not necessarily. There is a mandatory requirement. However, most companies do often, like, the first preference usually for a data scientist is somebody who has a PhD in CS or PhD in data science. The second one they go for is somebody who has a master's, and then they go for somebody who has a bachelor's. However, if you've got enough experience in a role that is pertaining to data and you've got good projects on your resume, you can definitely apply for these roles. I've seen folks who have both bachelor's as well as master's. Like me, for example, I have a master's degree and I'm a data scientist. So the degree is relevant to a certain extent, but having that technical knowledge, and if you're able to crack the interview and you have that skill set, it might be useful. But I would but keep in mind that that technical foundation is required, and there's a lot of work that you'd have to do in order to gain that. The next one is, how much does DBMS play in data science? DBMS is basically the data engineering part of it. So if you are becoming a data scientist, then you need to have a basic understanding of DBMS at least. DBMS is basically database management systems. This is being able to use databases to process data.
Okay. So there are some questions. Where's one of them? The earlier one was about business intelligence engineer. So were you able to handle that question?
It was on business analysts, and that would be similar to what you have here. Or business intelligence engineer also sort of falls in this domain, having some subject matter expertise and data engineering skill.
Okay, so I think one of the things to focus on here, Owais, is that many of the students here are freshers, in the sense that they do not have any, experience working in companies. And the second thing is that many of them have non-engineering backgrounds, so typically commerce backgrounds. And so one way to sort of, make this, think about this particular slide is that if somebody from that particular sort of, background and level of experience, what is possible in the short run versus what requires, getting another degree. So if you can somehow, address that, like, so for example, what are entry level data, positions that exist in the industry. So like if, Deloitte is interested in, getting somebody based on your previous experience, what is it that they look for and how does one acquire those skills?
Sure. I would say if you are coming from a non-technical background and are looking to sort of transition into data roles or the roles, I would say you should think about the first ones in particular, the product owner or the product manager. And then the second one is data analyst. For this, you do not need a degree in particular. You just need to work on being able to be good at Excel, databases, and data engineering, for which there are many online courses available. For anything beyond that, it would be, you would need more technical expertise. And usually you achieve that by either doing some sort of degree in data science or computer science in order to gain that. It is possible, but would be fairly challenging. One thing that you could do is start as a data analyst, join a company, and then gradually explore techniques. And once you have enough experience under your belt, you can transition to some of these roles internally without having a degree, but you need experience in that regard. And since you're a fresher, directly going to a data science role would be a bit challenging. It would be useful for you to explore things like the data analyst, or like I think Mohsin said, marketing data specialist, data oriented non-technical roles, or analyst roles, or marketing roles, or sales roles, which are intersection of being able to use data to make decisions and guide businesses.
Yeah. So in my experience, I'm a professor, so I don't have, corporate sort of, experience, which is current at least. But from what I see in all the top business schools in the US, business analytics, data science is becoming exceedingly important. One of the most popular courses in Columbia, for example, is about Python programming and its use in business decisions. So all the technical courses are among the most popular courses in Columbia, and the situation is the same in many of the top business schools. So I think my advice to all of you here is that, you need to, first of all, be excellent in Excel. Because increasingly, irrespective of where you start your first job, if you want to be, if you want to have a very successful career path, you need to be, very good at Excel, certainly. But I would also advise you to pick up one programming language. And the easiest one is Python, or if you want R. If you have to pick up one from scratch, I would advise you to pick up Python. But if you already know R, then you don't really need to sort of learn Python. All these courses are available on Coursera or edX and other platforms. So Owais is going to talk about these, I'm sure, in the coming slides. But my advice to you is, please invest in yourselves and learn one programming language. It is absolutely important. And Python would probably be the one of choice, whether you do data science or HR for that matter. It is absolutely important to know programming in the modern business context, and some sort of ability to be able to process data, or at least understand if some computer scientist or machine learning person is on the team and is talking about something. So it's important to do that. Okay. Okay, Owais, you can go ahead, please.
So yeah, the next one, which is basically the life cycle of a data science project, where you would fit in somewhere across this. You do not need to know all the terminology here, and we're not going to cover all the terminologies. I'm going to just talk at a high level about this. You can, and which will be probably what you need at this time. The first thing, like I said, is you need to get a sense of what the business is and what the get a good business understanding of the problem that you're sort of facing within that industry, and then whether you have the data available, how do you acquire that data, how do you sort of clean that data, and then the data science part, which is modeling, which includes feature engineering, sort of training that model and evaluating that model. So building a data science model, eventually deploying that model to production, and then the final thing is sort of customer acceptance. And before this happens, these specific parts of this life cycle are interlinked, where you can be going in an agile methodology by repeating these till you finally obtain a product that is has good scores and has good performance and is acceptable to the customer. And while that happens, these phases are going to continue to repeat. So with that, how to sort of get started, which is going into, from the product management perspective, there's an online course on Coursera which says AI product management specialization, which includes machine learning foundations for product managers. It includes managing machine learning projects. There's the human factors in AI. But along with this, if you go to Coursera, and I will sort of let me see if I can do that while this presentation is running. My screen is still visible, I presume.
Yes, sir.
So Python programming, there is a for even, I think there's data analysis as well, from what I understand. Let me just try to find that. Python data. There you go. Sorry. So like from Rice University, there's a course on data analysis with Python, statistics with Python, data analysis using Python. There are a whole ton of courses available. You could pick one of these and do that. Intro to machine learning or data science. There are a ton of courses available within this as well, which can give you a sense of the technical side of things if you're interested in it. And for DBMS or data engineering, you've got learn basic SQL basics for data science specialization. So these courses are also useful for you. So with that, let me sort of return to the presentation and wrap things up before we take any questions, if there are any. So I guess that's the last slide, basically. So yeah, I would say don't think of data science as this, like not every correlation might be valid. So I would say work on these courses, get acquainted with data science so that you can look at data and be able to process it more effectively. And with that, I just say thank you. And before I sort of conclude, I'd like to even thank Professor Ansari for contributing to some of the content and slides of this presentation. And thank you guys for listening through the presentation and asking these questions.
Thank you, Wes. That was an excellent presentation. We have, a few minutes left. If I think you should just stop sharing now, and then we can have a more relaxed conversation, wherein anybody can ask any question, and we'll try to answer it. Okay.
So, sir, we have a question in the chat box in which Tahir asked, can you suggest from where we can do mini projects and practice in the field of SQL? So, mini projects in the form of machine learning and data science. So, what are the, sources where we can get mini projects?
So, basically, I would say start by doing there's a website called LeetCode, which has basically questions within SQL before you even get started with any project. You could start by just doing this. So let me just share this link.
I'm sharing.
Just a second. So yeah, so I'm going to share it in chat. So here, for example, if you click on this link, it will take you to LeetCode, where there are tons and tons of questions in SQL, which each of them are like a problem that you're trying to solve. It could be a project itself. Now, I would recommend that you start with the easy questions here. Once you've gained some understanding of SQL and are able to start writing SQL queries, it would be useful for you to start answering some of these questions. And then eventually, once you get a sense of it, then proceed to projects. And for projects, I would say I do not have specific data sets available right now, but I can look for resources and share some data sets.
Yeah, so Kaggle data sets are typically what you would look for, right? So in fact, actually, I would also advise you guys to look at the resources that are available on the SETI website. So if you go to SETI website, there is a tab on resources. And then within resources, there is data science and machine learning resources. And so we have identified a number of courses and various, things that one can sort of, look at within this particular ecosystem. Some of that will be relevant to you guys. Much of it would be relevant to computer science graduates, but some of that would be relevant to you. So you can take a look and see. We have curated some content there.
I have a question.
Mohsin, go ahead.
There is a certification on Coursera from Google on data analyst. It's about 6-month long course, and Google is claiming that after doing that course, you will be eligible for doing a job in top companies. So what's your comment on that?
I would say the course might be useful. I can have a look at the content as well. Regarding the claim, that's something that I'm not I wouldn't be able to verify
it's
that in particular.
The first, you can see right now on edX. Oh, sorry, in Coursera.
Yeah, in fact, I have looked at this course. And it looks like a pretty good course in the sense that it starts from the real basics and builds up.
Yeah.
So if you want to start and you don't have much background knowledge, I think this would be a good course to sort of, look at. Also, remember that these certifications are very useful in the modern context. Companies look for initiative. And so if they see that you have done, 1 or 2 or 3 certifications or courses, it first of all, gives an impression to any recruiter that this person really at least is working hard and is taking the initiative, going beyond what is being taught in the school. So I would certainly advise it. Now, regarding any claim that you would, be able to do a job immediately or you would get a job, of course, that depends upon a ton of other things that you have to have in place before you get something. But definitely it is a course that I think is worth doing if you have the time and the inclination in this particular area.
Absolutely agree with Professor Ansari. I think that makes sense.
Any other questions?
So I have a question in my WhatsApp chat box. Someone just, its app is not working. So yeah, the person asked, there are certain courses which is in MS, which universities are providing abroad in data science and data analysis. And now I know about this. She's not from the technical background. She's not from BTech CS. So what should she choose? And are they both the same? So this is the question from the other person's side.
What are the two courses?
Data science and data analysis. The masters in data science and data analyst.
Yeah, it will depend upon that particular university and what exactly that master's is covering, right? It's very difficult to just look at the title and figure out. One has to look at the details. So if she can send this link to this course to me or to Owais, we can take a look and in fact have a conversation with this person to figure out, whether this would be suitable or not suitable. It requires personalized advice, which I cannot give at this particular point in time here without knowing what the courses are. So just ask her to reach out to me or to.
Sir, she's in the meet. Zoha, if you can turn off your mic now. Zoha was in the meet. She's still in the meet, but she's not able to turn on the mic.
Okay, that's fine. Zoha must have gotten the message and she can always reach out to me. So, and we can take this offline. Right, so. Any other questions, Mohsen? You have to unmute yourself, Mohsen.
I've shared the link of the Google certification on data analyst. Can you check that out if it's relevant to do or not?
Yeah, so we will look at it and get back to you guys and we will interact with you via the WhatsApp group. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing I just want to, sorry, Owais, go ahead, please.
No, sorry, we're just adding that this course definitely looks good and would be very useful, I'm sure. But yeah, continue, Professor Ansari.
No, wait. Let's first finish the questions and then I have one announcement to make. So, any other questions, guys? Okay, so I think, so remember the session on resumes that Amin Fatmi, Aman Mansoori and Shaista Khan did. Based on that, around like 40 students submitted their resumes. And this group, Amim and team Misal has looked through your resumes and they want to give you feedback. For this, they want to create a WhatsApp group and I'm going to share an invitation. And those who want feedback on their resumes should use this particular WhatsApp invitation and join the group and they will deal with each person on a one-on-one basis, okay? Their understanding was that most of the resumes that they got did not take into account anything that they basically, talked about in the session, and that most of these resumes will require significant overhaul, basically. And so, and they are willing to even work with people who did not submit their resumes on the first round. So it is up to you guys whether you really want to take this opportunity or not. I'm going to forward this, link in our WhatsApp group, and I will also send them to Safdar and to Arif. and you can sort of, pass it on to people who might want to benefit. Ultimately, this whole, program that we are running for you is only going to be useful if you want to improve. And on many of these sessions and many of the initiatives that we have done till now, I see that some people are interested, but the others don't care. I mean, at least that's my, I believe in honest feedback. And so the response has been unfortunately a bit underwhelming. And of course, you cannot obviously change people. It has to come from within. But this is again my pitch that, take this opportunity, try to improve yourselves, reach out to us, and we are ready to help. But we can only help those who really want to change. We cannot, force you guys to sort of, do something. So please, and you don't have to apologize for others. All you can do is focus on yourself as an individual and try to improve. Okay. And I think that's the best thing that you can do for yourself. Okay. So please take this opportunity again. We have a number of sessions that are coming up, 4 or 5, again from top-notch people. Take this opportunity, ask questions, try to be comfortable, because out there in the business world, you will have to speak up. The response on the group discussions was very underwhelming. Till now, we have been able to do only one group discussion. So there are only 2, takeaways from this response. One is that you all are excellent at group discussion and need no training. Or the other is that, you don't care enough to learn. I mean, what else can I take from this particular sort of, response? So again, think about it. If you want a group discussion session, reach out to us, reach out to Safdar, reach out to Arif, and try to improve yourselves. Okay. So, again, as I said, CETI is willing to help. We have a ton of good people. We can try to help you in whatever way we can. But again, the initiative has to come from you guys. Okay. Anything else before we conclude? Safdar? Safdar is the leader here, so I reach out to Safdar on a regular basis, and Arif at AMU.
Right.
So
Nothing from my side, suggestion.
ठीक है ना? So make sure you tell your friends to attend these things regularly and try to motivate each other. Ultimately, you guys need to somehow improve your own lot. So think about that, okay? So I think we are at the end now, and so we will continue next week. I guess I will try to see, whether we can get a good speaker for you. There may be a change of schedule, but I will let you guys know. And then let's continue on this and hope that, my pep talk is going to make a difference for those who are listening or will look at it later on. Okay. So let's then end this thing unless somebody else has something to ask. Is there any other question? Okay, very good. So let's end this. Khalil, can you please,
Sure, sir.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.